everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor. This is episode 210. So today, our episode is called What's the Deal with the Angelic Timeline? I'm going to tell you the story of the angelic portal that opened last week, July 14th of 2026. But I'm going to go back a little further and talk a little bit about what is the angelic timeline. I didn't actually know at first. And if you're new to the podcast or you're new to listening to me, you might want to go back to episode 208, where I talked about what's the deal with angelic awakening. I told my whole story of my resistance to the word angelic and kind of how I moved into embracing that and this angelic work. And what happened last week gave me a lot more clarity about what we're here for and what the angelic timeline is here for. So if you've been following me on social media, you've been hearing me use this term angelic timeline for this entire year, and probably it started around the end of last year. So in September of 2025, I was guided to go to Santa Barbara for the first time and offer a few events. And I have a friend there who's a sound healer, and I met some really amazing people there. And I had a lot of unfolding and opening for myself, to the point that people on social media started saying they noticed that I looked different. They noticed that my eyes looked different. It's when I started talking about the angelic energy that comes through my eyes when I do those social media videos. And the information I got kind of later was that was the solidification of this angelic timeline in the quantum space. And I talked about in the episode, What's the Deal with Angelic Awakening? I talked about my fractal form as a seraphim, which is just means like the beings that hold the space of source. Angelic, kind of the quote unquote highest angelic beings, or least differentiated is the way I like to think about it. So we all came out of source. We differentiated in all sorts of forms, most of us, all the way down now to being in these denser human bodies. And the seraphim are just the least differentiated kind of forms outside of source. And as I've been kind of reclaiming my fractal energy, my fractal memory, I started recognizing and then naming myself as a seraphim. And a lot of that kind of came through when I was in Santa Barbara. And after that, I had a lot of unfolding and a lot of expansion happening. And then I started getting information. I believe it was the first new moon ceremony of this year. So a lot of the things I do are intuitively guided. And I work with the seraphim, the other seraphim that are still in the seraphim realm, as my guides. And they started saying, you need to do these new moon ceremonies. You need to start offering these virtual ceremonies. And I believe it was in that first new moon ceremony where I was kind of channeling the seraphim that I got this date of July 14th. They'd never given me an exact date before. Around August of 2023, they were in the middle of 2024, the 3D and 5D timelines are going to split. And that actually happened on June 15th. And the closer I got, they gave me kind of a window. But there's so much variation in what can happen because most of us have free will. And so there's, even the most omnipotent of beings doesn't know exactly what's going to happen because of the free will, because all of these beings are interacting in a way that create all these different timelines and all these different possibilities. And you could see all the possibilities and not necessarily even know which one is going to solidify. That's the word that I always get. And it starts with this solidification, in the quantum and the energetic, before it sort of solidifies into physical matter. That's how all manifestation happens. That's how all physicality all comes out of the quantum first. So I believe it was the first new moon ceremony this year where I started talking about this date. And it was around that time. It was probably a little earlier than that, or maybe a little later than that, because what is time? This year's been insane. Where I started using this term angelic timeline. And again, I didn't really know what that meant. I just knew that the 5D timelines that split off in 2024 were starting to differentiate themselves out. And that I was on a specific timeline, and in fact meant to kind of spearhead this timeline that my guides called the angelic timeline. And then in that first new moon ceremony, they gave me this date, July 14th. And they said that there would be, they said a lot of different things over time, and things sort of evolved, but that there would be essentially a portal opening that day. There would be a big shift of energy is kind of how it started. And eventually they even gave me a time. It was 2:30 Pacific, and then it was 2:15, and then it was 2. And I was just going with the flow of this. I started sharing the date in sort of not everywhere. I'm not a predictive psychic. That's not something I do. I just told you why, because we never know exactly what's going to happen. Things can always change. And that date of July 14th never changed. I did not know that was the new moon until like actually a month or so before, when I was scheduling the new moon ceremonies out. And I was like, oh, hey, July 14th is actually the new moon of July this year. And I don't think that was a coincidence, but I had no way of knowing that when this date just kind of came out in January. And the date never changed. The time moved a little bit, but the date never changed. So this whole year, I've been preparing everybody I work with and the people in my community for this date, this July 14th date, and sort of saying, I don't know what it is. And I knew that the angelic timeline had solidified in the physical, that was part of like what was happening. And I knew that these 5D timelines were going to start splitting out into different differentiations, different focuses, different levels of expansion, to the point that eventually my guides gave me the term 9D for the angelic. They don't actually really like any of those dimensional numbers. They say that they're not really an accurate description, and they acknowledge that like we need some sort of like common language that like makes sense. So you can think of this as layers of expansion. And also, just very quickly, I say this a lot, but especially if this is the first time you're listening, this is not a shift out of the physical body. It was never meant to be. This is not like a Christian rapture thing where some people leave their body. That has been done. The Pleiadians did that. They left their physical bodies and moved into light bodies. We're doing this in a way that we're keeping our physical bodies. No one's ever done this before. No other being on the planet has ever done this, on any planet, in any universe, in any place, has ever done this before. So more recently, my guides started giving me the term 9D to differentiate between 5D. And all this means is the layers, the levels of expansion you have access to beyond your physical body. So physical body, the 3D, the energy is everything. Vibration is everything. So my physical body is a manifestation of my energy body. And there's energy running through my physical body, or I wouldn't be here. And there's all of these expanded fields around the body that we used to just kind of call the aura or the auric field. I now call the quantum body, because there's just so many layers to this. And my guides started giving me a framework for opening these fields. That actually started in August of 2023, when the chakra spaces started elongating. And I apologize, I'm fighting some really intense fatigue because of what I did last week. And I was called to do this episode today. I checked in about it, so I'm going to just keep drinking water as I need to. So we've been expanding the quantum aspects of our body since August of 2023. And first it was the elongation of these chakras, and then it was the opening of these fields. So the more of these expanded fields we have access to, the bigger the expansion of our quantum bodies into beyond the 3D, beyond the 5D, beyond the 9D, beyond the 12D, whatever words you want to use for that people have agreed on we like to order things and categorize things as humans. And like, that's helpful, and it's not exactly accurate. And my guides, we've just arrived at this, like, okay, we'll just use this languaging because it sort of makes sense to people, where it does help delineate, it does help differentiate some of these different timelines. So I knew as we got closer to this date that like these 5D timelines were going to start splitting apart, and that the angelic timeline was the 9D timeline. And my guides just kept saying it was the timeline for the highest and most illuminated good. And if I tried to tell you all of the stories of everything that happened leading up to this, like we would be here all day. I will say that this is one of those things where, looking back now, I can see how all of these pieces fell into place and all of these things came in that needed to come in. And the biggest piece of this was like, in any awakening process, you have to commit to this process. It's kind of like a marriage. You actually have to recommit to this process over and over again. You know, there's moments where like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is hard. I want to be done. And you've got to kind of work through that and move through that and continue to move into more clarity, expansion, and harmony. So along this path, just the moon cycle before this big shift on July 14th, the Earth made a decision to step fully into the angelic timeline. That's what sort of shifted everything afterwards into what we're doing now. We've known, the angelic community has known what this timeline was for. I didn't, Paula didn't, but the angelic timeline, the angelic community, the seraphim knew. It wasn't time for me to know, and the Earth hadn't fully committed to this until she did. And for that, I'm so grateful to my friend David, who invited me into his medicine wheel, because that's what allowed that to happen. That's what allowed the communication between the angelic and the Earth to open, to the point where the Earth finally realized she was holding a lot of distorted energy, a lot of discoherent energy, muddiness and contraction. That wasn't her energy. And again, as within, so without, as above, so below. This is what happens to us on our journey as well. We realize that we're holding frequencies that we thought were ours because they've been there for so long, sometimes for lifetimes, for generations, through lineages. And there comes a point on the journey when you're like, oh, this isn't my energy and I don't have to keep this anymore. So the Earth had kind of an awakening moment, and then she fully committed to the angelic timeline. And then it was like full steam ahead. So I was guided. I knew I was going to go back to Santa Barbara sometime this year, and I did my year ahead reading at the beginning of the year, and I pulled cards that had dolphins on them for April and July. And I was like, okay, I'm supposed to go to Santa Barbara in either April or July. And then the way the year started playing out, it was like I could see pretty early on that it was going to be July, and I didn't know what time, what part of July. I was just in flow about that. And as I got a little bit closer, I got more guidance, and it was like, you need to be on the beach for this shift on July 14th. It's important that you're on the beach in Santa Barbara. So I was like, okay. So I just made my travel arrangements to be there on the 14th at 2 p.m. Pacific time precisely. And my husband came with me. I even told him, I'm like, I know he's not, we sometimes have a joke in our online community about like Muggle husbands or Muggle partners. Like, he's definitely my Muggle husband. And he's just learned to go with the flow. This whole trip, he was just like, I'm just along for the ride. So I'm going to tell you what happened during this angelic new Earth portal activation on July 14th. And the first thing I'm going to say about that is that I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. I have done this in other lifetimes before. In order to open an angelic portal, the seraphim body must be unspooled from the vessel. And this physical body here, Paula, is the vessel in this lifetime. I've lived other lifetimes where I had other vessels. And every time I had done this, in any other lifetime, unspooled my seraphim body to open a portal, the physical vessel died. So I sort of regained these memories just a week or two before I was leaving, and was like, okay, I don't think that's supposed to happen this time, but I wasn't, I wasn't exactly sure. I was just like, my husband said he was along for the ride. I was along for the angelic ride. And every time I've done this, it serves this, this big shift of energy. So I mentioned the Pleiadians at one point had 3D bodies, had physical bodies. They moved into light bodies. I unspooled my seraphim body to open the portal for them to do that. And in that lifetime, I had embodied as a Pleiadian, and like the rest of the Pleiadians who chose to leave their bodies, not everyone did, we left our bodies at that time, which means that your physical body does die. I've done this multiple other times. I did this to help the Lemurians escape into another dimension when Atlantis, when that was falling, that civilization was falling. I unspooled my seraphim body to open a portal so that the Lemurians could escape. And that's important. Actually, that comes up in this story a little bit. And it's important to the overall purpose of the angelic timeline. It's really interesting how there's that old saying, God will never give you more than you can handle. I think that that's partly why sometimes we get little pieces of things, because if we saw the whole picture right away, like I always joke, I would like be in the fetal position in the corner, just like rocking back and forth. So, and then there's a point on the journey when you like look back and you go, oh yeah, there's this piece and there's this piece and there's this piece. This goes back to further than that, but to August of 2023 when I started helping people start elongating the chakras, like to prepare for this shift. This started years before the shift actually happened. So just a little bit of background knowledge about, I knew that in order to open this portal, I was supposed to unspool my seraphim body. I also knew that every time I've done that in any other lifetime, my physical vessel body has died. And so I had some feelings about that. Honestly, some of my feelings were like, oh, I mean, I could be done and maybe that would be my service. And like, that would be a good way to go out, to be honest. And there was a part of me that was like, you know, tired and thinking that might be okay. And the amount of fatigue that I've had since this has happened is, it's funny. I was joking with my friend Serene the other day. I said, in my mind, it was like, A, I die, B, I'm fine. But there was a C choice there, which is like, it takes a toll and I'm going to work through that. And right now I'm sort of in that like, oh my gosh, that was a lot. So all of that to say, I felt the weight of this. And in most of my other incarnations, when I've done this, I've sort of done it alone in the physical. I had support in the quantum, but in the physical realm I was in, like I was the one opening and holding the portal open. There were other beings like serving things, but like I was the only one holding that space. And so sort of at the last minute on Tuesday, in my online community, the Spiritual Awakening Sanctuary, which is moving into the Sacred Angelic Sanctuary, we've changed our name a couple times. That's coming soon. There's a weekly meetup that is run by our moderator, Angel Serene, and every Monday they get together and they do an activation and they talk and they meet. And every once in a while, I sort of crash the Monday meetup. And so she had been guided to do this specific activation to support the portal opening on Tuesday at that exact time at 2 p.m. Pacific. And I think that's the reason I'm still alive, to be honest. So thank you to Serene, who's actually actively watching me as I film this live, for a lot of things, but for that intuition and trusting your intuition. So sort of at the last minute, I realized I was supposed to actually go on the call and do the first part of this portal activation live with the people in the community who were there. And the fact that they were holding space there is like literally the reason that my physical vessel didn't die doing this energy work, because it was so intense and expanded and difficult, to be honest. So I went to Santa Barbara. I did an event Monday night. I did a sound journey. And at that sound journey, my dad showed up. And I've talked about him a lot on the podcast, including on his birthday this year, he decided to walk the angelic path and to become an angel. And I was able to activate him and give him wings, which was really amazing. And he went into angel training school, and so I hadn't heard from him a lot. Like, we were sort of always kind of in touch, but he showed back up. First of all, he gave me the best parking spot ever, which was a thing he did always in his real life. We always joked that he would get a parking spot right out front. And I had all this equipment to bring in, and it was like street parking only, and I was going to have to park in this lot and walk. And like, boom, right out in front, directly in front of the door, there was a parking spot when I got there. And I was like, thanks, Dad. So right away, I knew he was there. And he came in during that journey and essentially told me he had decided to bond with an archangel to gain his archangel wings, and that he had a role to play moving forward in this angelic timeline and in this portal activation. And I was like, awesome, thank you. And he started telling me all of these really beautiful things that I think he wished he had been able to tell me when he was alive, about like how proud he was of me, and just really like healing the father wound kind of things. And this comes into the rest of the story. It seems like this is how this goes. It seems like I'm on an ADHD tangent, but this actually comes back in the rest of the story. So I did that sound journey. My dad came into that space, which was purposeful. And then as soon as it was over, actually kind of all that day, the day before, I was hearing this like rapid fire light language, which in the dimensional frequency expansion, it's amethyst, is this rapid fire light language, but it was constant. Just constantly in my brain. I had that a lot as a child, and then I learned to shut it down. And this is the first time since it's like reawakened that this was like, I wasn't fighting it. I was just listening to it. I could just like, and I could feel the rhythm of it. And it was just like, oh my gosh, okay, the portal's getting ready to open. Like, and I started to get a sense of like what the movement would feel like and what this like unspooling needed to be, of sort of opening the front of my body, and like this kind of contraction and expansion of unspooling, and that the unspooling itself was done through that really rapid fire light language. So the night before the portal opened, like I was hearing that all night long. I woke up the next morning hearing it. I just knew. I posted this really focused short video that had a short activation that is on social media. I am going to do a longer one when my reservoir is a little less depleted. I'm not going to do that today because I don't have the energy for that in my human body. But I knew this was going to be really intense, and I started to get a sense of what it looked like energetically, like what my role was, because I really didn't. I was like, well, I'll show up on the beach and just like wait for guidance. But the night before, I started feeling the unspooling happen, and leading up to that, I had also had a remembrance of my Magdalene fractal, which is the Divine Mother, and a reclaiming of that, and an activation that I shared with the community. And that's the activation that they used as I was doing the second part of the portal activation. So I got to the beach. I went the day before to try to figure out where I was supposed to be. And there was a pod of dolphins like kind of swam by, and I was like, well, show me where I'm supposed to be. Like, is this where I'm supposed to be? And they started swimming in a circle. They had been swimming like linearly, and they stopped and started swimming in a circle. And I was like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. And then they like swam off. So I knew they were going to be supporting in the quantum and the physical, and the whales. I could feel the whales and the horses. Like, I knew there was a lot of support around this, but I still didn't know like exactly what I was supposed to do. Even like as I got there, I was like, well, I'm just going to like open the portal. I don't know. So I got to the beach. I set up at the place that the dolphins had kind of shown me to set up the day before. And then I got online with my online community, and there were 17 people from my community who were there live. And I don't have words for how grateful I am for that, for them holding the space, for them being there to witness it, to be able to say someone else was there, and because I could have done this myself, and that has been my history. So the fact that I accepted and received that help and support is a shift for me in my seraphim fractal and in my human being body self. And it also amplified everything that happened. So I can't tell you exactly what happened because I was so deep in channeling mode that I don't have a remembrance fully in my cognitive mind of everything that happened, but I'm going to do my best to kind of describe the whole ceremony, because there's actually activation in hearing this story, and it's important that this story be shared. And then I'm going to tell you afterwards, like, what does all of this mean? Why did all of this happen? Because then I got an understanding beyond just like, this is the next big expansion of humanity, and the earth is expanding, and we're opening more expanded timelines beyond even the 5D. So I was in kind of full channel mode as I started, and the first thing I started doing through the whole first part of the activation was that rapid fire light language, just like opening and like closing of my seraphim body, of unspooling of the seraphim net. And I've talked about the seraphim net. I used to call it the archangel net because it's guarded by archangels. There is an angelic net of energy that surrounds the earth. It is the fabric of existence. It is what is woven through all of the fabric of existence. That is what the seraphim body is made of. That's why I call it the seraphim net. And so because of my fractal, I'm carrying that energy in my being, in my body. And in order to open the portal, the seraphim body has to unspool fully, and that's like what literally opens this portal. And for whatever reason, I have a feeling, I mean, I have an understanding of this now. Like, I was supposed to be on the beach. I was supposed to be on that specific beach. I was supposed to be at the edge of the water. I was supposed to do the first part with the community, and then I was supposed to walk down the beach. So I started channeling right away, just just this really rapid light language that was opening and unspooling that. And then I would sort of stop and then channel some like English, and then I would open. And so that went on for, I think, about 20 to 25 minutes. And one of the things that came through in that, and this, my conscious mind came back forward, so I remember this more clearly than some of the rest of the things I was saying. I was talking about the angelic timeline and like what it was here for, and what the angelic beings on earth are here for, which is not just to hold light and anchor light in. We have a much more specific purpose, but I'm going to avoid the spoiler alert for once. I usually jump ahead, but I'm going to wait till we get there. One of the things that happened was that my dad came in as his human form, Conrad Schlax, in his archangel form, Raziel, and began to heal the father wound, and was talking about how this activation of the Magdalene energy, the divine mother, this is the earth's energy too. She holds both. She is stepping back into that divine mother energy, that divine feminine energy. And it's not that the pendulum's supposed to swing all the way back from this like toxic patriarchy to matriarchy. We're coming to balance. We're supposed to hold both of those frequencies within ourselves. The divine feminine, the divine masculine, the divine whole, the divine all that is. And in order to like rebalance those, there has to be a healing of the father wound of the distorted masculine, and a healing of the distorted feminine, the rise of the divine feminine and masculine. So my dad stepped in and sort of offered this father wound healing, like live in the moment. And this idea of allowing ourselves to be seen, allowing ourselves to be protected, allowing ourselves to be cared for, so that we can do this like unspooling, so that we can open and do the healing that we're here to do. And that was really potent and powerful. And then again, there was just this like rapid fire light language. And I will release to the public this angelic new earth portal activation again when I have the bandwidth to actually do that again, because it took a lot out of me in the moment. So the seraphim body was unspooling, and one of the other things that came through was that this was a solar activation. So when this first happened, I heard you'll see a light in the sky, and I thought maybe it was what people call the solar flash, and they were like, we're not quite there yet. And as I got to the beach, it was like, you need to be in the sun, because the light of the sun is what's going to activate the seraphim body to unspool, to open. So I was sitting in full sunlight, and interestingly, at 2 p.m., the sun was almost directly overhead, because the sun goes down kind of late in July at that place. So I think that's partly why the 2 p.m. thing came, because the sun was almost directly over my head as I was doing this. And in fact, at one point while I was doing the light language, I was guided to look up at the sun. I did have sunglasses on, and I saw two suns, and I was like, oh, that was just like an after image, right? That was just a reflection. And so I looked down and closed my eyes, and then I looked back up again, and they were still there. So there was an actual like physical splitting of something to where I saw two suns in the sky, which was a huge confirmation. And I don't have any proof of that other than me just saying, and me thinking it wasn't real, and then looking it up again and seeing it. So something was definitely, there was a reality that was like splitting and opening. So as I moved through that, then it sort of came to me that I needed to walk down the beach to a certain point on the beach to kind of spool the net deeply into the ground, and that the reason I was at the edge of the water was because it needed to go into the earth and into the water, and that the dolphins and whales were there to like carry it around the water, and that the horses were here to like distribute it around the earth. That's why I've been working so much with horses, and I worked with the horses right before I left. So as I got off the call, again, like I was fully in a channeling mode this entire time. So there were more things that came through, and I will happily share them if and as I remember them. And I think some of it was just meant to be shared in that moment. So I got up and it was about 25 after 2, I think, because they told me I needed to take my watch off and leave my phone and have no electronics on me for the next part of that. I mean, I had taken my watch off, but it was like sitting next to me. So it was like, you need to walk down the beach to the end of the beach, which I was like probably about a half mile. It was a long walk. Because this was a lot of energy. I'll just say, I was running so much energy. Like some of the people in the community were like, I don't know how you did light language that rapid. And this was just coming through for like 25 minutes straight, and like the whole night before and the whole morning up. So I turned off the camera, I got up, and I had told my husband, I'm like, I don't know how long this is going to take. And he's like, that's fine. And he left because he gets a little bit triggered by light language. And it was really windy on the beach. And it's very interesting. He is one of my angelic protectors. It's not necessarily conscious of that. And he ended up taking this seat, kind of this panoramic view where he saw the whole thing of me walking down the beach. And I was guided to start walking down the beach, and I was totally focused on what I was doing. I did look up a couple times because I could like feel the dolphins and the whales and stuff, and I didn't see anything. Every time I put my foot down on the earth, the net would like unspool out from my foot. And so I was totally focused on like how I was walking, and the whole way down the beach, I was just doing that light language and like letting this stuff unspool. Well, later, my husband told me he thought that was why I was walking down the beach. There was a dolphin swimming with me the entire way down and the entire way back. He thought I was following the dolphin. I didn't even know the dolphin was there. The dolphin was supporting the portal activation, which is really cool, and comes from a pretty reliable source who has no skin in this game consciously. So, sorry, there was like a loud motor confirmation noise outside my window. So I walked down the beach, unspooling and light languaging. Again, this was at least, I'm going to say it was probably about a half mile down the beach. It was a long way. And there were these kind of cliffs, these rock cliffs kind of jutting out. And it was like, at first I was like, I thought I was supposed to walk all the way to the end. And I was getting tired. The online community stayed on and did this activation, and I could feel the support, and I was in it till I was done. I was gonna finish it either way, but like I did get to a point like where I was like, okay, how much further do I have to walk, because this is a lot. And then I saw this little indentation in the rocks. I should have taken a picture, but it wasn't really a cave, but like a mini cave, this little indentation. It was like, you need to walk to there. And I was like, oh, okay, this is good. So I was walking with my feet in the water. That's what they told me to do. So I was unspooling through the earth into the water, and then through the earth into the earth. It was like 1 foot in the water and 1 foot on the drier ground along the beach. And the water was freezing. I was actually kind of cold through part of this. I'm glad I was walking. I think that kept me warm. So I got to this cave, or this little indentation, and I was like, okay, well, you know what now? And I walked toward it. Like, this whole thing was very ceremonial. If somebody had been watching me, it probably just looked like I was like meditatively walking on the beach. And at first I thought I was supposed to like go into the little indentation or sit in there, but it was like, no, you need to come to the place where that juts out, and you need to put your hands in the rocks, and you need to unspool into the rocks. And luckily, like, I was so far down the beach, nobody was there at that point. So I was just in full-on weirdo angelic portal activation mode. Just like unspooling into the rocks. At first facing the rocks, and then they had me turn around and face the water with my hands behind me. And then they had me spooling both of them. And then I realized what I was doing was fusing the mycelial net, that travels through the surface of the earth, that's connected through all the mushrooms and the roots of the trees and everything. I was fusing that with the angelic net, and the unspooling of my body like opened the portal for the angelic energy to come fully through, and then all the way down into that mycelial net, so that now the earth's body herself is made of angelic energy. And one of the things that came through as I was channeling at the beginning was that anytime you decide to release distortion, to release muddiness, to move into expansion, there's a purging process. And so the earth said, or the angels sort of said through, I don't know, it was like everything was communicating with me, but the earth will continue purging. Do not be frightened. Understand this is a part of the process. And then there were all these earthquakes, and then there's all these floods, and then there's all these fires. Like, all of that is part of the earth purging, because she has chosen to move into this angelic energy. And in order to hold the clarity of this energy that is for her expansion, for her ascension as the being, the big, beautiful being that she is, there is going to be a purging process. And this is an inevitable process. And what kept coming through was like, do not be frightened of this process, and understand that it is going to happen to the extent it needs to happen. And the analogy I got for this was kind of, we are cells on the earth's body. And if you think about it, sometimes the cells in our body run amok, right? We call that cancer. I used to work in imaging, specifically around breast imaging. And so when there is a breast cancer in the body, we try to remove the cancer, or we treat the cancer with something like radiation or chemotherapy or immunotherapy, something that is going to target those cells that have mutated, that are running amok, to bring them back, to either kill them or bring them back into coherence or whatever. That is what the earth is doing right now. And unfortunately, we are just cells on her body, and we are cells that have been running amok. We are cells that have been causing issues for her. And so part of this acceptance of the angelic assistance that has been offered to her is that she is now ready to ascend herself, and she will do what she needs to do for her body to ascend. And you can think about, like, when you move through the awakening process, most of us know there are relationships that end, there are situations that end, there are things that we might have once felt served us that now we look at and even label something like toxic. That is part of this awakening process. And the angelic timeline exists to assist the earth in her ascension, in her awakening process. That is what we are here for. And our job is to support her through this, and to help her move the energy out that no longer serves her, to help her call in the energy that does serve her. And because as within, so without, as above, so below, we are doing this as well as the cells on her body. And enough of us have moved in this direction that it gave her the courage to move in that direction. And now we can come back into a coherence in being. You know, think about when your body's out of balance. My body is very tired. I cannot, like, again, I thought, oh, I'll either die or I'll be fine. I don't know. That's the linear ADHD, all or nothing. That's 3D thinking, right? Oh, I'll either die or I'll be fine. The yes and the 5D90 is like, holy crap, I was tired and my body is exhausted. Like, I could sleep probably 5 days straight and then maybe feel rested. And I've been doing the best I can to take care of myself. And that's a beautiful illustration of this idea that when you move into this big shift, just like the earth is now, there is always a purging process. There is always an integration process. And so what is our job moving forward? The angelic timeline exists to serve the earth in her awakening. And not the very next day, I had to take a day off. Now, like, I look back at all this and I'm like, oh my God, no wonder I'm tired. Because I took a day off and then I did this Lemurian thing. And then I took, I think I had a day off, and then I did one more sound journey. And it was all part of this. This was all like, it was sandwiched beautifully, exactly as it was meant to be. And also like, man, no wonder I'm tired. Because that was a lot. So the next thing that happened, I knew I was there. I was partly there the first time to meet this Lemurian guide, who really is, a lot of our guides are really just aspects of ourselves. So she was she was the Lemurian version of me who unspooled her body to open this portal. Well, she's been guarding these Lemurian portals ever since. She's been kind of stuck between realities. She's not in a physical body, but she hasn't been able to fully go home into the Lemurian dimension. And so I was there to help her go home, to close that portal, and then to guard the portal with angelic energy. So I knew I was there to do that. I had a specific bowl there with me. And as I was doing that portal closing ceremony, which is also in the online community as one of the bonus episodes, we are doing grid work now. There is an old episode about grid work. It might even be what's the deal with grid work. You can go back and listen to that, and I think it has a free meditation that like guides you through some basic grid work. If you're called to this, come to the community, because this is what we're here for. And there's always a link in the show notes to join the community. There's a lot of different reasons. There's interaction with like-hearted beings. There's exclusive discounts. There's all of that stuff. And if you're called to the Angelic Timeline, it's because you're here to serve. And we're here to serve through this grid work. And as I was closing this Lemurian portal, first of all, they asked me to close all the Lemurian portals on Earth because that energy has been exploited. Humans and other beings, not just humans, many beings have been using the Lemurian energy and exploiting the dreaminess of that energy, this beautiful, like watery movement of this energy to create things like glamours, to make it look like something is one way when underneath it is something else. The Lemurians did not want their energy used that way, and they asked me to close all of the portals, and so we did. And now, it doesn't mean we don't have access to that. It doesn't mean that they're not like available, and this is the Earth reclaiming her energy. One of the things I do when we reclaim our energy, I call all my energy back to me over all time and space. I release energy that's not mine. I release energy that's not serving my highest good. That Lemurian energy is not the Earth's energy. It's energy that existed on the Earth, but it's not her energy. And so she is choosing, they chose mutually to separate from each other. In the quantum space, you know, to the extent that, or well, in the physical of the quantum, like, because everything's all one, blah, blah, blah. And in the physical reality and even the quantum light that we're working with here, there is still differentiation. The minute you fractalize out of source, there's differentiation. And so I had this understanding during this Lemurian portal closing ceremony that is what we're here for, and that we are going to be closing other portals. And I know the next portals that we're going to be closing, and I'm not supposed to talk about that publicly yet because it's going to make a lot of beings unhappy and some people unhappy, and that's okay. This is not about us as individuals. This is about the Earth and her ascension. This is about us as a community of light and our expansion, and our decision to come here to serve this expansion. And so if that work calls to you, we are going to be doing that together. We're going to be doing angelic grid work at my Angelic Awakening Retreat in October. There are 3 spots left for that, and I'm going to teach you how to do this. That's not the only place to learn, but if you want to learn that in person with the horses, who are the ones who taught me how to do that, that's what we're going to be doing there. And there will be more of those opportunities. There will be more virtual opportunities. This is not something that can be done by any one being. It doesn't matter what your original fractal form was. It cannot be done by any one of us. It's got to be done in community. And as I was walking back down the beach, I sort of got away from the rest of that story. I finished what I was meant to finish. And then I was guided to walk back and sing. The dimensional frequency expansion. It was emerald. It was seraphonite. It was the beautiful song of the angelic that I hear anytime I open I hear this angelic singing. I sang the entire way back, and the dolphin apparently followed me back the whole way back. And I got about 2/3 back to where the blanket was that we had set up. And I found out later that my online community, they started at 2 p.m. and they got off about 2:45. And when I got back to the blanket, it was either 3:02 or 3:06, because I said to my husband, that was only an hour. Like, I thought that was 6 hours long. Like, I thought it was going to be like 5 o'clock. I really, I had no sense of time. As I was walking along the beach, I felt the community disengage. And my guide said to me, this is the point at which your physical vessel would have collapsed if you hadn't invited them to help you. If you had tried to do this by yourself, this is the moment when you would have just collapsed on the beach. And I don't know what the cause would have been, but I would have been dead. And the rest of the way back to my blanket was it was difficult. And that happened for a reason, so that I could understand the importance of community in this. I've been talking about it, and like a lot of us, I'm guilty of trying to hold the space myself, because it didn't feel safe to hold it with support, or the support didn't feel real, or I didn't trust that it was going to remain, or I didn't trust that I deserved it. Whatever the reasoning is, we cannot do this alone. This angelic timeline must be held by all of the angelic beings who are here on earth. And if you're just newly awakening to this and you're like, well, I don't even know what the heck you're talking about, that's completely fine. That is why there are different people at different layers. I have been doing this spiritual work since I was 16 years old. I have been fully committed to it since I was 19. I've been professionally doing energy work since I was 25, and I am 48 years old. I have been doing this for lifetimes, and almost all of this lifetime, more than half of this lifetime, and I cannot do this alone. And I do not have all the answers, and I will never have all the answers, and I will never fault you for not having answers, and I will never expect you to be in a place that you're not in, and I will never judge you for not being there. To show up with an open heart, that's all we can ask from each other, is to show up with an open heart. And that is the new earth, is to show up with an open heart, and to show up willing to receive, which is really hard for most of us. Not just willing to give. Most of us are willing to give, willing to receive. This is a work of exchange. After I finished this activation, the rest of the week, the earth sent me so many gifts, so many signs, dragonflies everywhere, which my dad, I don't know why, ever since he died, he sent me dragonflies. They were literally following me around. I have pictures, yellow dragonflies, orange dragonflies, red dragonflies, blue dragonflies, tiny dragonflies, big dragonflies. Everywhere I went and played golf the last day. 4 dragonflies followed me around for 18 holes of golf. I'm not exaggerating. Every single hole I looked and they were there. The earth wants us to be supported in this work, just as we want to support her. And that is the fundamental shift of this 9D awakening, of this new earth, is moving away from the earning of our worth and moving into the reclamation of our worth, of our power, of our fractal source, which is source. We are all fractals of source energy. We've differentiated out into many different forms, in many different ways, with different layers of remembrance, with different seeming gifts and access to those gifts. None of that matters as much as you opening your heart and being present for yourself and the others on this path with you, including the earth. That is the work. And the grid work and the way to do that, I can teach you all of that. I can teach you dimensional frequency expansion, and I will. Anybody who wants to learn, you get a discount if you're in the online community, to everything, to my one-on-ones, to DFE classes, to the activations. All of the activations I do in that group are free for the people in the group, or it's $22 a month. That's the exchange. It's not much for what you get to receive if you can allow yourself to receive, and what you can give to others who are willing to receive. So if that calls to you, there's always a link in the show notes to join us there. And this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning of this shift into the new earth, of a new way of being, of living that is an old way, but also a new way. Because sometimes we get nostalgic about the old ways and we think that they were better. And in some ways they were, and in some ways they weren't. There is a way to merge the best of who we are and what we have been into the expansion of who we are becoming, to create a true new earth, a true, what some people might call heaven on earth, or a utopian existence. And it's not going to be an easy journey. We didn't sign up to do easy work. If you're here, you agreed to this, you might have a little talking to with your higher self when you get out of this physical vessel. And there is so much support available to you now, more than ever before, as we do this work together. Have a beautiful rest of your day.